The Oklahoma Sooners return to Norman, but can they return to their winning ways as they play host to the Maine Black Bears? Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we will see between these two 4-4 squads. Real quickly, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below and that ring notification. That way you don't miss any single live reaction, post-game show, Sunday Fun Day, Dave Talks Ball, the Monday Morning Power Hour, regardless of what is your fix. When you hit that ring notification, you get told on everything that we're doing on the channel. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. For the back and forth banner between me and Dave, follow Dave at Mach 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This preview is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days with RHOBACK.com. When you use that promo code SECU for 20% off all pullovers, joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, much, much more. Make sure that you are dressed to nine on game days, especially as you close out the 2024 season with RHOBACK.com. Promo code SECU. Dave, this is a game that it feels like more so Oklahoma should not dominate, but get back to normal scheduling. There is no line on this matchup. Kickoff set for 1:30 SEC Network Plus. It's a 4-4 team versus a 4-4 team. One's an FCS school. The other one is an FBS Power 4 program. This is more so a matchup where Oklahoma, as long as they're not the reason they're shooting themselves in the foot, should probably coast to an easy victory.
No, 100%. I think you're 100% call. You go into this game, obviously it's one you can't lose. A 4-4 Maine Black Bear team, the fighting Stephen Kings over there. It's like you said, figuring out some kind of rotation with that offensive line with Jacob Sexton being out. They rotate the Isaiah Autry kid in. Me and you talked about it in the reaction. I think Jackson Arnold is the guy. I think we both believe he's the guy you move forward. I don't think you go into the portal. I think you got to have somebody who just sits there and develop. Football is a development sport across the board, especially the offensive line, quarterback spots. I think you got to roll with him. I thought last week he was fine. I appreciated how he kind of took the yards on the ground that were in front of him. I mean, you look at the box score, it wasn't some incredible rushing numbers here. But, hey, if there was something there, if he had 6 to 8 yards in the flat, he'd go take it, you go slide, pick it up, keep ahead of the chains. That's the best they've looked. Then when Sexton went out, it was just downhill after that. You got to get that offensive line. Bill Bedenbaugh has got to figure out how to get that rotation going for a end-of-the-year stretch that you're just fighting, clawing, trying to get to 6. You're hoping you get to 5 here, but more so than just getting that 5th win, got to figure out how we can get that offensive line rotation, that offensive line set to move on to hopefully get to 6.
You brought up Jackson Arnold. I think it's very fair to say that a lot of people gave up on the 5-star from Denton, Texas, well before advertised. And there was always going to be some struggles. But I think that also it's fair to say, I was kind of right when I said that Seth Littrell was the problem. They were holding this team back because the way the offensive play calling looked from Joe Jon Finley and Kevin Johns against Ole Miss. Yes, Ole Miss did get 9 sacks on the day. Yes, they did have 15 tackles for losses. But you still saw an identity. You still saw a quick up-tempo passing game. You saw a little bit of the rushing attack. Over 100 yards. That's only the second time a team has rushed for triple digits against Ole Miss in 2024. So there is life here. There is something to be, I think, not proud of is the right word, but certainly to hold your hat on. And I think it also starts off with the quarterback. Arnold looked better in this matchup. 2 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, 71 completion percentage. He feels like a guy that if you get this version for the rest of the year, in matchups against LSU, in matchups against Alabama, in matchups against Missouri, you may not get a win, but you'll know that this is somebody that you can build around. And I think that also this is a game where he's not going to get touched that often in terms of getting sacked because of the level of competition. This is a game where he should be able to kind of gain that confidence. And this is also one where he should be able to build that connectivity, whether it be with Jake Roberts, whether it be with Bauer Sharp, JJ Hester. Maybe you get back a healthy version of Deion Burks in this matchup. Regardless, this is one of those games where we look back at the Temple game a few weeks back in week 1 and say, this is why we see something positive with him as our starting quarterback. And ultimately, that's what my focus is on this week. How does Jackson Arnold show you he is the right guy to lead this team in 2025?
Yeah, no, I got it. Because I think the defense is going to give you a chance every week, like we've talked about. It's obviously going to be better than anything Maine's going to put on the field against you on Saturday. Everything is about, especially defensively, you probably want to stay as healthy as possible for that last 3-game stretch. Because they had 3 games, Missouri, Alabama, LSU, and a bye, I think right after. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. After Missouri, a bye.
Yeah.
But I think that at Missouri game is the one you kind of look at where you're like, depending the health of Brady Cook, could that be our 6th win there? But it starts this week. And heading into Columbia next week, the offensive line, 10 sacks against Ole Miss, or gave up 10 sacks against Ole Miss. It really, I don't know if the run game can even get going at all at that pace. The way they have played up front this year, again, injuries, whatever it be, I still don't feel like they're maximizing the most. And again, there's only so much you can do with bad lemons, but let's at least get to the lemonade part a little bit. It may not be the greatest lemonade in the world, but let's at least go compete. I mean, you're just trying to be below average at this point on the offensive line. I don't know if it can get to good at this point or even average, but it starts this week. Jacob Sexton being out. Once he went out against Ole Miss, it was all downhill.
It's a bad look. I mean, it's a very bad look for this offense. And again, we kind of know, call a spade a spade. What you see is what you're going to get. That doesn't mean that you can't do enough offensively to give your defense a shot to bail you out and then make this thing a close call, especially in games against Alabama, who has struggled, and they've struggled on the road. Both their losses have come away from Bryant-Denny Stadium, a Mizzou squad that we don't know if they're going to have a healthy Brady Cook. Their defense is going to be able to create turnovers, even with Brady Cook out on the field. So it's one of those things to where you say, if our offense can find any identity whatsoever, we'll be content. And it all starts off with the offensive line execution. It all starts off with the consistency of the ground game. I will say, yes, you did have some question marks when it comes to how you want to run the football, but Javonte Barnes, he's averaging roughly around 3.8 yards per play. Taylor Tatum has looked really good when he's on the field, 5.8 yards per play. There's enough to like. I think what I really just want to see in this matchup, if I am an Oklahoma fan, is what will be the game plan whenever we have to go take on a Missouri, whenever we have to go take on an Alabama, whenever we have to go take on an LSU in Baton Rouge to close out the year. What is going to be the plan that works for Jackson Arnold for this run game to be able to capitalize and put up some yardage, for this offense to have some type of weaponry that gets us a first down conversion? Because if you can do that and truly kind of show, without showing too much, to a guy like Eli Drinkwitz or a guy like Brian Kelly or a guy like Kalen DeBoer on what you're going to do moving forward, it at least gives you, I think, a comfortability that our defense is playing out of its mind. Our offense doesn't have a pulse, but it's good enough just for one or two explosive plays. We're in that spotlight to where things are going to maybe be manageable. 7-5 is not off the table. 6-6 certainly is off the table. 5-7, it's our floor, but it's our floor because of where we were to start the season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just, again, some of it, I mean, we can talk in circles about this, but it just kind of feels like it's down the middle here. It's, again, as you know, Cole, everything's usually not black or white. To be fair to Seth Luttrell, again, I don't think he maximized the most out of what they had. This wasn't like it was a 1 to 2 week thing and it all came on you in the middle of the year. I mean, you knew all year you were probably going to be banged up and it just never adjusted. And it really starts up front. I mean, I'm with you. I haven't seen any injury. I guess we'll get an injury report on Wednesday, but I haven't seen any injury report on the receiver skill position guys. It's just consistently the top 5 out of 7 guys have been out. Andro Anthony, like you mentioned, Burks. I mean, do they get any of them back this week, or do they even try to play any of them this week?
Do you really need to play them this week in the matchup? I mean, yeah. I'm not saying that it wouldn't hurt. I mean, if you can get back a Nick Anderson, you can get back a Deion Burks before you have to take on a Missouri defense. Yeah, it would be beneficial for a quarterback like Jackson Arnold. But I'm not saying that this will be a determining factor to why the Black Bears are keeping this thing close. If the Black Bears are keeping this thing close, there are just so many culture problems, which is why I don't believe that. Because if you would have seen those culture problems be a factor on the road against Ole Miss, and they weren't. In fact, you got to remember that going into halftime, Ole Miss was the one that had to make adjustments because they were trailing Oklahoma and trailing this anemic offense for similar reasons to what we saw when they took on Kentucky earlier in the year. And maybe that's what you got to hold your hat on if you're Oklahoma. The other thing that I really want to see in this matchup, Dave, I want to see the depth of this defense. And the reason why I say that is because you know that you're losing some players in the offseason. Danny Stutzman's going to be gone. Bailey Bowman's going to be gone. Dominic Williams, I'm not sure if he's going to come back or not. But what I'm just saying is you're going to lose names to the draft. You're going to lose names to eligibility. You are still a team that in the offseason can regroup, reassess. Some of these wide receivers, I can guarantee you, will be back in 2025 to better their draft stock if they have eligibility because of how much time that they missed. To where if you bring in the right players via the portal on the offensive line, maybe at running back, Maybe you bring in somebody to pair alongside Dominic Williams. I mean, Dominic. When you can play, sorry about that. You find someone to be the replacement for Danny Stutzman. Now you feel like that you're in the conversation. It's a more manageable schedule next year because we're flipping from what Texas had this year. We maybe can get to that 10-win season, but it starts off by figuring out what is your depth on the defensive front. Where do you feel comfortable about guys who are going to have to step up and play much more significant roles in 2025?
Yeah. No, just specifically to this game, off the lines get figured out because I don't think they gave up a sack until Sexton went out, and then that just kind of shows you how bad it went downhill from that perspective when they gave up 10 sacks after Jacob Sexton went out. That's rough. I think it was the Howland kid that gave up a bunch of them when I'm looking at it.
Dave, you just want to log in some predictions. I think that we both know this is going to be a game where it is what it is. I'll go first. We don't know what the final spread's going to be because there really isn't one. Not only is Oklahoma going to win this game, I think you're going to see a lot of positivity with Jackson Arnold. I think that you're going to see a lot of growth from what we watched last week. It's going to be more of that consistent performance. There's something about having a wounded dog that gets healthy and now back at full capacity that just has an energy to himself that is never going to want to slow down. And I feel like that's Arnold at this point. He understood that he was at one moment a 5-star can't miss prospect that slowly became the backup, the afterthought. Michael Hawkins Jr. came on in and got a win against Auburn. He played well at times against Tennessee, but then he had his struggles. And now this is Jackson Arnold's team for the rest of the year. I think that Jackson Arnold's going to do everything in his power to show the rest of the SEC. I'm still one of those players that you have to game plan for. I'm still somebody that you have to get all the bells and whistles to slow me down. And I know that it's against Maine. I know this is a game that probably is not going to be that big of a deal. I know this is one that we're going to gloss on over on Sunday Funday. But if I can see the directiveness, the consistency of this offensive passing attack, if I can see life with the way the defensive depth is, I'm not ready to sell my stock on Oklahoma for 2025. I'm done for 2024. They'll be 7-5 at best. But I feel like that, again, 7-5 is on the horizon if they play their best version of football in this matchup. If they don't show that there's still a turnover problem, if they show they have any consistency when it comes to completing first downs, I'm going to say final score 41-3. I think the Black Bears get on the board. But I really want to see a guy like Jackson Arnold find his way into the end zone, trust his arm strength, build that relationship with the tight ends, and a game plan be put out there that can be sustainable for the rest of the season when you take on a Missouri, when you take on an Alabama, and when you take on an LSU.
Yeah, I'm going to go 41-6. I think the defense is going to get a couple of scores. I think the offense will still be a little sluggish. It is what it is right now. Sexton, big loss down the line. They got to figure that out. They got 2 weeks this week, next week to figure it out in practice. So we'll see about the halfway point. I don't think they're going to go with the Howland kid. I think he was so bad last week. And again, like you said, I thought the game plan going into last week was not terrible. Again, you're one hand tied behind your back, interim OC, all the injuries. I think this week you just try to get out as healthy as possible, but it starts with the offensive line. That's where I want to see. I think the defense has a successful day. Gets a score, 41-6 against the Ole Miss Black Bears.
So, what do you guys think? Is this going to be a complete blowout? Is this going to be a game where we have to eat crow because if they turn back to Michael Hawkins? How does the offensive line look? How does the defensive depth look? Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. For today's Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Boomer Sooner Nation, guess what? I think you're going to be fine and get back to your winning ways. Peace.